as it turns out, first impressions are critical. So when we think about employees being less engaged than ever before, it's really that first impression. What is that first impression? It's the onboarding process. This critical time frame determines as to whether you're going to have loyal and engaged employees or if they're going to leave in just a matter of weeks. For this webinar, I just want to create a couple quick ground rules. You guys will be muted, but please do feel free to ask questions through the chat box at any time, and then we'll address these questions at the very end of the webinar. I'll gather these questions and we'll go through as many of them as we can at the very end. So again, thank you again for being here. We know that your time is precious and we're very thrilled that you chose to spend the next short period of time with us. And right now I'd like to turn it over to Eric Silk, the CEO and founder of Welcomary.
Thanks, Mina. Yeah, so just to echo everything she just said, we are very grateful that y'all are here with us this afternoon. I think afternoon for everyone, although I know we've got representation from all over this country of ours, where hopefully whatever the crazy weather is you're dealing with today, you are safe and sound, whether it's snow or crazy heat wave or something in between. I haven't looked at the entire map. Yeah, real excited to dive in here and talk about onboarding in 2023. So maybe I will spoil a little bit with this very first slide, diving into exactly what we think that state is. The honest truth here is that in 2023, we're dealing with a lot of the same conditions we've always dealt with. We're still dealing with humans, all those same hopes and dreams and biases and insecurities and everything that comes in between. That's always been the case when you're talking about new folks and making sure that they have a good landing, they can get to exactly where they need to be, where you want them to be in their role as efficiently, as comfortably as possible. The difference is now we're doing it with a lot of these, concepts and mindsets that are hitting the public consciousness in a very different way because of 2022. Mina mentioned quiet quitting. There's also a little thing called the Great Resignation, and whether those things are. Oh, we got a bit of an echo. There we go. Whether you consider those things to be a flash in the pan, a fad, or something that's not going away, which I happen to be on that latter side of things, it's important. And, we have to consider how we do things through that lens now. Just by coincidence, I saw a quote on LinkedIn today, so absolutely no credit to me, that struck a chord. And the quote was, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." So, let's make no mistake here. The onboarding, the way your new hires feel, the way they feel as if they're treated, that is culture. Does not matter how brilliant your strategy is. It's still something that's going to be executed and acted upon and improved upon by people. And so if those people aren't feeling good about what they're doing, it doesn't really matter about the rest, or matters much less. So we won't dwell too much on me. I've worked for a number of different companies in a number of different industries. And I think, honestly, it was very much by design. I'm in a product management background, which means I kind of work with people on every team in a company to some extent or another in order to get internal alignment on things, in order to roll something out, whether this is a legal or PR or marketing or sales or, finance, anything else. It's also allowed me to see, like I said, a lot of different industries, everything from media to automotive to financial services, and companies of all different sizes. And, some trends really start to present themselves very clearly once you've been in just a handful of roles, which is how companies think about this. And of course, it's not the same across the board. Some folks do it much better than others. There are some big companies out there that do it really, really well. There are some small companies that do it really, really well. Unfortunately, it's still not really embedded in, I would say, the general mindset of the kinds of things to do here. And I think that's a shame, because the ways that we can improve on the way that employee onboarding works, it's kind of low-hanging fruit. There's some stuff that you can do that is not super hard to do, and the payoff, or at least the negative consequences you avoid, are huge. So I will just tell you a very, very brief anecdote here for the second bullet here. One of the companies where I worked was, of course, Capital One. At the time, 50,000 plus employees. My first day was your standard corporate orientation. It was fine. I met some friendly people who I was never going to see again because they were in different offices, different teams. Got some nice free food, watched some informative videos, got my badge, got my computer, had some tax forms to fill out, and that was pretty much it. The very next day was my first day of real work, where I suddenly found myself in a meeting. And some of you have heard this before. The person who was presenting in this meeting, he was doing it through a lens of all kinds of jargon. Think about it. A company that's been around 25 years, they've got all their own language they've generated. But on top of that, you've got all the other industry specific language. I've always worked in a technological capacity. So all the tech terms, all the consumer banking terms, all the credit card terms, all the home and auto loan, concepts. I was swimming and I was having trouble keeping my head above water. And there's this one acronym that this gentleman kept on using over and over again, which was OECP. And at the end, after I tried looking in the intranet, seeing what it stood for, asking people around me, what does this thing mean? I finally went up to him, introduced myself, and asked him, and he did not know the answer. So I would say my first foray into really getting involved in the world of onboarding and, cultural improvements, that kind of thing, was what we did next. So I rallied an internal team and we did this side of desk project that was just all about managing internal knowledge so that everybody in the company was on the same page. We had that shared accountability. Hey, this is a very easy to use tool that'll let you reference whatever little bit of knowledge it is that you have not heard of before or unfamiliar with. It seems simple and it paid off hugely, very popular. And we began spreading that mindset elsewhere. So enough about me, more than enough about me. I mentioned consequences of not super great onboarding, because first impressions matter for a lot. This is one of the most staggering stats I've seen about this topic. It was the first time I saw it. It continues to be. 1 of 5, 20% of employees are out of there within the first 45 days. Some of those folks, there are other reasons why they're leaving. Maybe they're holding out for maybe their first choice job offer and it came through right as they started this other job. Maybe there's a health or family related issue, something personal going on. But in a lot of those cases, it is because they are not getting a great first impression. It is because they are feeling, well, one of many things that aren't so great. And some of these are pointers to that. Why does it take me so long to really feel like I'm getting woven into the culture and the way that this company works? However long it's been around. Any company, in order to really become successful, get your start, you have to establish, well, we are all aligned in this certain way. Maybe we all pursue this same mission. We all march to this specific drum. Sometimes that just doesn't happen, or it takes a really, really painfully long time. Lack of transparency. Sure, if you don't want to include me on some email threads because I don't really know enough yet to understand even what you're talking about, that's understandable. But there's this line where you feel like you're on the outside looking in. And the fact that so many jobs are 100% remote these days makes it even harder. You can't pass by someone in the hall, ask them a little question. You can maybe send them an email or a Slack message or try to give them a call. That does not guarantee you're going to get an answer out. So you kind of feel like you're a little bit isolated, even if it's not intentional. And because of this, you're left to your own devices to figure out how to navigate and to understand, well, what is going on here? How do I do this right? I am excited about this job I just started in. I want to be successful. I don't necessarily want to coast. Hopefully that's the kind of folks that we're hiring here. So if I have to figure it out, I will. But soon enough, if I get frustrated enough, the thing I'm going to be figuring out is, what's my exit strategy? Where do I go next? So I mentioned this just a couple slides ago. Some of the feelings that you've got when your new employer is not necessarily prioritizing having this good experience, having this positive welcome in, here's everything you need, we are here for you, and we're going to support you through this process. Overwhelmed, a lot to learn. I'm not really sure how I'm being evaluated and how I should be learning it and the right way to make sure I'm learning it correctly. Underappreciated. It's been 2 weeks. I feel like I've done quite a bit already, but I have no idea how this company thinks about output, about rewarding people, about praise and feedback. That's a bit of a transparency thing. Not sure why I joined. This has just been a subpar experience for me. And I'm wondering, I turned down a couple of other jobs that maybe had other facets to them that were more attractive to me. Maybe this wasn't even the biggest paycheck that I chose, but I thought I was going to be a really good fit here. Now I'm starting to feel like maybe not so much. Lost in a sea of new jargon. I gave you my own little story about that. And I know from experience now that I am far from the only one who has felt that way. Feeling like you don't know where to go for help. Again, because we are so remote these days, that becomes even harder. How do I know who to ping about this thing or that thing unless I've already been explicitly introduced to them? Open to other opportunities. I'm unsure why I joined. So now I'm kind of creeping a little bit back toward, well, maybe that other job's still open, or maybe this company that said, hey, if you change your mind, we'll be there for you. Maybe I am going to go back and chat with them. And all this is because I am lost and alone. I won't say that this is 100% avoidable or solvable, but it is pretty close to. And we're going to talk about exactly what are the kinds of things we can do to get there. So a few more scary metrics outside of that 20% one. 88% of organizations do not onboard well, according to HR leaders. Now, this is a study. Obviously, questions like this are pretty subjective, but an HR leader saying, my organization does not onboard well, I think it tells you everything you need to know. 58% of organizations are saying their onboarding program is focused on processes and paperwork. And you know what? I think it's probably higher than that. Almost every company I personally have onboarded at, that is mostly what it consists of. The onboarding program is focused on the things that the company feels like it needs in order for them to say, all right, this person is ready to work. They've signed their I-9, they've filled it out. They have been given a company handbook, which might include some standard operating procedures in it. All right, great, good to go. Go thrive in your role. That's not how it works. Do we think that's okay? I added that question because I think for a lot of folks, that is okay because it's the way it's always been done. And maybe there's this sense that you don't have the budget, you don't have the time or the resources to do any better than that. We're going to talk about exactly why that's not really the case, even if we feel like it is. 1 in 5 new hires will not recommend their employer. This one maps pretty well to that 20% are going to be gone within, the first 45 days of their job. A net detractor, they don't think people should work there. This is exactly what you might call that, glass door poison pill, which some companies are very vigilant about scrubbing out. Others are a little more honest about it, and they want to engage with people who didn't have a good experience. No matter what, this is the kind of thing that's going to happen. People get upset on their way out, and they are going to kind of actively be against the optics, the impression you're trying to give to the rest of the world you're trying to hire or bring on as a client, or just look good in front of. 82% of millennials, and millennials starting to get a little bit antiquated because there's a lot more of this Gen Z that's in the working force now. But let's just say a whole lot of people say that quiet quitting sounds appealing. Just as a reminder, quiet quitting is essentially when you're just not really feeling it at your job anymore. And you're not necessarily just walking out the door and saying, all right, I'm out of here. You are doing the bare minimum. You are doing what's expected of you. I thought this was pretty funny when I first heard about this term because, when you read a job description, that's kind of the bare minimum for a lot of people. Okay, these are the things I'll be doing. I'll be, constructing Excel spreadsheets. I'll be filling out expense reports. I will be, presenting updates to this group or that group. But that's not really what most people want. They want the ability to rise above and beyond. It depends on where you're coming from, what industry you're in, of course, a little bit. But generally speaking, we all want more. We want to start and maybe get up to that point that we're doing what's expected of us. And then we want to rise above that, maybe because we want a promotion as soon as possible. We want the ability to laterally move to another team. We want just to enrich ourselves and get smarter and more knowledgeable about something. So I'll ask this again. Do we think that's okay? If you have a workforce that's mostly folks who have essentially quiet quit or maybe always were like that, maybe that's all right. They're doing the job that's expected of them. I'm being a little bit tongue in cheek here because I think that's mostly not true. I think most people, if you ask them, do you want your employees to do the bare minimum? No one is going to say yes, or very few at least. Addressing how to be successful during the onboarding process. In other words, here are the things that you're going to want to do to really thrive in your role. Kind of the flip side of this quiet quitting mindset. Increases satisfaction by 3.5 times. People feel good about what they're doing, whatever they're doing, if they have a much clearer sense of what their path is to get to that next level, like I said, of understanding, of knowledge, of career, of salary, what have you. 70% of new employees who've had exceptional onboarding experiences, again, very subjective, but exceptional onboarding. I think we all know it when we see it. Unfortunately, most of us have not seen it too much. They say they have the best possible job. Once more, this is not specific to the level you're at, the job family you're in, the industry you're in. You just have the best possible job. I love where I am right now. I was brought in this very smooth, very, engaging way where I felt like I was connecting with my team and understanding what was expected of me and having very clear resources for figuring out what I didn't know yet. And yeah, once I crossed that hump, I have the best possible job. I don't think I've ever said that before personally, but maybe that's because I haven't had that exceptional onboarding experience yet. Strong onboarding can improve new hire retention by more than 80%. This is a Glassdoor study, and this is one of those things that is very easy to quantify. How expensive is it to lose someone? How expensive is it to kickstart the recruiting engine again for that role and to free up the calendars of all the people on their team who they're going to need to be part of that interview process? How much will it be to actually onboard that person? Maybe we're willing to invest in that initial onboarding, but if we have to do it time and time again because our new hires don't last for very long, that is a huge cost that we can easily avoid. Productivity goes up when there's some kind of structured onboarding process. 60% year-over-year improvement in revenue. Now, this is another one where you can pretty clearly tie it back to a number. I got that structured onboarding process. If call it in engineering, I'm going to be more productive. I'm going to be able to start contributing in a meaningful way to the code that my team is writing much faster. If I'm in sales, if I figure out what our best practices are, how to use our tools, our CRM, how we handle outreach, kind of meld that with my own talents and my own skill set, well, I'm going to get out there and start selling much faster. Those are two more obvious examples, but productivity means different things to different people. No matter how you slice it, it is less cost and or more revenue. So places where it's very easy to kind of get off this path of having the best intentions in mind. Well, I mentioned some of these already. Your onboarding is primarily signing paperwork. This is the legacy. This is the historic. That is what your onboarding is. That's why I know I've had a number of experiences where it's something that's done mainly by HR. The last very large company I worked for, all of onboarding was taken care of by HR, which is fine, as long as all they were focusing on was company level things. This is a 10,000 person company, and the paperwork side of things. Everyone has to sign the same things. Everybody has to fill out the same things. Everybody has to go and get their badge. Everybody has to do this and that. That's essential, but it's not the entire story. So if your onboarding is just that, that's a really big turnoff right there. You don't involve hiring managers or teammates. Like I said, HR is great, especially when they're very well aligned to, the focus and the mission of the company, and when they have the resources and the means to do what they really want to do. I know that's often not the case, unfortunately. But no matter what, you still need to bring this person in with the people they're actually going to be working with. Maybe this is getting them an onboarding buddy, somebody who's on their team who can show them the ropes. Maybe it's just having a quick session or a coffee or a meeting with, other leaders or managers in their job family or on their team, so they can start to get a sense of, hey, even if I'm not going to work with this person all the time, this is an example of someone who's really figured it out here. They're in a level of leadership. I can learn from them. I can go to them for questions and advice. Your onboarding program is not personalized. So once again, we're circling back to this first bullet here. Your onboarding program is, hey, you are anybody who has accepted a job offer at company ABC. So here's your I-9 form. Here's where you can order a t-shirt. Here's where you can get your business cards. What about this person? This person is unique. This person, we assume, has gone through the interview process, has been deemed to be a great fit for the team, for the company, by their peers, by their hiring manager, maybe by others, but then we just treat them like anybody else as soon as they walk in. Well, they worked really hard to get that job. Now we as the employer want to work somewhat to make sure they feel good about what they decided to do. And these companies with that poor onboarding, attrition, hiring, recruiting, expensive, time-consuming, not great for your reputation. What else? Just to kind of, we'll tie a knot on this whole kind of the scary side of what happens when we're not doing it well in just a moment. But these results, I've gone through a lot of these already. So just to hammer that in, bad reputation. It does not look good for you. You're losing folks. Your attrition rate is sky high compared to your competitors. People have low morale. They are not excited about what they're doing every day. They're kind of dragging their feet. That's where I think that quote about culture and strategy and how they interact with each other really comes into play. The smartest strategy in the world, if you're not taking into account how your team feels at the beginning or in the middle of their time with you, then it's going to have a really bad effect on that. Ever revolving door of new hires. That has impacts to everything on here. Lack of productivity means we're not making as much money. It's something we could pretty easily avoid, and we have to invest so much less in it than we would in just throwing more people at the problem or getting some super expensive consultants to come in and try to give some suggestions. Competitive advantages. If your main competitors out there sniff a little blood in the water, that you are losing folks left and right, not because your strategy or your core business is bad, but just because you're having trouble getting people excited and bringing them on, well, they're going to start going after your people. I've seen this happen in a couple of different industries before. You'll have people who just don't show up. You will have things be more and more expensive to hire someone because as you exhaust that pool of the right people for the job, they're going to be harder and harder to find. And they might have higher and higher expectations for that job once you offer it to them. And of course, quiet quitting. So let's fight that. Solutions. Every company is different. Every department is different. Every employee is different. There are some things we're going to try our best to focus on that are agnostic to that. You know, there's always a way to mold that, to modify that, to, you know, make that yours. Very high level here. Our focus, the way we think about this is it all comes down to information. And that's not completely true. Nothing can substitute a really solid personal connection you have with someone. But all of these conversations, all the ways that you connect with people in the first place, they are all going to be in some way, I'm willing to bet, related to the information, things they need to start absorbing and figuring out as an employee of your organization. The what, the who, and the how. The what, this is, of course, key data about where you're working, the space you're in. Many people are hired because they have experience in that industry. I'm one of those examples of someone who is not. I generally have tended to land in my new role at a new company, not because I had a ton of experience. I actually wanted to explore a new industry. It was more because they saw me as a good fit. And I know that's the case for a lot of folks. So if you have the right person and they gel really well with your team, and all you really have to fit in here is making sure they can understand this new space they're in, well, make it easy for them. They're going to figure things out as long as you give them access to the right knowledge. So the easiest way to boil this down is vocabulary, terminology, acronyms, standard operating procedures. Almost every company I've ever come into contact with has this knowledge in some form somewhere, but it's either really out of date, it's not centralized, people have no idea where to find it. Who? That's the people, of course. Org charts, some people roll their eyes when you talk about them or bring them up. I think they're really, really critical because they always tell a story. The longer a company has been around, the more your org chart is going to tell you, well, why is, say, you know, engineering under the COO? Why don't they have a CTO? You got questions like that. And the org chart helps you to figure out, well, maybe this is part of how the company evolved. Maybe this reflects in some way what their philosophy or their identity is as an organization. No matter how you look at it, though, it is about people. as a person who's brand new to this company on this team, show me who makes the decisions, how things ladder up, who is my boss's boss's boss, and who else reports to them? How are decisions made around here? And pretty soon, if I figure out who I need to go to get a certain answer about something, and I'm confident that they are going to be the right person for that answer, I'll be able to get there no problem. Maybe I'll have to wait a couple days to hear back from them, but I know who the right person is, and that's critical. And then, of course, the how. So how do you figure out, or how did this company come to be? How do we do business? How do we make decisions strategically on which way we're going to go? This might be philosophy. This might be corporate identity. This might just be a process. But all this revolves around this knowledge, this information. So, number one, just to be a little more explicit, there's this concept called pre-boarding that many of you might be familiar with. It basically means you're starting to onboard someone before your new hire's first day at work. Some people will tell you that the day someone has their first interview with you is technically the beginning of their onboarding process. You might consider that a bit of a stretch, but I think it is undeniable that as soon as they sign that offer letter or accept that offer, that is the beginning of pre-boarding. So the forms, we talked about the forms to death already, but they're important. They're important because no one wants to get sued. Everyone wants to get paid. So, if they can do that before they even show up, why not give them the option? A lot of folks are going to be taking a week or at least a few days off before their new job anyway. They're probably going to want to start learning about it because you want to start kind of pivoting your mindset. Hey, here's my new job. Here's my new company. Let me get a sense of it. After you've decided on that start date, give them some kind of stream of updates. Doesn't have to be all the time, but if you can immerse someone in what you're doing, even just a little bit earlier, that's a head start that's going to pay off big as time goes on. And then, this one, not everybody can do it, but if you can provide them with some kind of IT level access, this is one of those biggest hangups where I've had first days where they mess up something with my order form. And so I don't get a computer till day 3 or 4. The reality is it's impossible to do your job or even start your job these days without things like that. So the sooner you can begin that process, as soon as you know this person's going to be on my team, the better off you're going to be. New hire checklist. So I won't go through all of these in detail, but a lot of this already focuses on things that we've already discussed here. Make them feel welcome, however that looks, whatever form that takes. Give them those forms early on. Give them the tools they need, or at least give them a heads up on how they're going to have to go about getting access to those tools. Make sure they know what to expect those first few days. Some companies have a very immersive full week orientation before you even start your actual job. Some companies say, yep, here's an hour with HR. Now we're throwing you in the deep end. No matter what, if you know what to expect, you're going to be better off for it. Any other resources to allow them to understand, what's this thing I've gotten myself into? Who are these people? What is this all about? Building in time to connect with their new teammates. This is not just for the new hire. This is, of course, for the colleagues they're going to be meeting too. All those people are well immersed in their jobs. They probably have busy schedules. If we can't justify carving out a little bit of time to allow those people to connect meaningfully with their new teammates, we're missing out on a lot. And of course, any kind of cadence or goals to shoot for. A lot of companies use the concept of the first 90 days. Maybe you have a check-in every 30 days. Maybe you do it more often than that. And that's certainly something I'm going to advocate for. And then, as I mentioned before, there's this concept of the buddy. The buddy is likely going to be somebody who is more of a peer with this new hire rather than a manager or an executive or somebody on a different team, but it's someone who can show you the ropes. Even if you are not going to meet that person in the flesh for months because we're in a fully remote environment here, you can still start to connect with someone. We've all made, at this point in history, very deep friendships and connections with people that we've never met in person before, or will not for a very long time after we've met them. These opportunities to connect. So meet and greet, that's probably the most classic one. That's a short intro meeting where you just kind of talk about each other. Maybe you talk about your job a little bit or the job you're going to be doing, but it's just more about that first connection where there's not really anything at stake. Most meetings we schedule, other than one-on-ones or sync or check-in, they've got a purpose. And so you might get distracted, but your purpose is still to do that. And unfortunately, it's usually not, let's just talk to each other. let's just hear a little bit about each other because, well, much like, your dorm mate in your new college dorm, you're going to be spending a lot of time with this person. So might as well figure out what makes them tick, start to see what you have in common. That buddy or that mentor, this concept of checking in with them on a regular basis, maybe it's even every day, maybe it's even more than once a day during that first really critical time. But no matter what, some kind of regularity so that the new hire knows, all right, I know that I'm going to be able to run all this stuff by this person, specific questions, maybe some anxieties or fears I have about this new role. Team lunches, another classic. Doesn't have to be super expensive or fancy, just an opportunity to connect with people. A little bit tougher if they are fully remote, a lot tougher, let's be real. But that's where you can use something like the fourth thing here instead. Some kind of video. I mean, a video is great, or an audio, or even just an email, or, people leave companies. A lot of times their team will prepare a card for them, like a farewell card. Much less often I found there's a welcome card, which is the exact same thing. We're so excited to have you. I remember this thing about you from when we were interviewing you, and I'm really looking forward to connecting on that topic or this other one. Involving leadership. This one can be tricky if you don't do it well. But of course, since so much of leadership tends to be folks who have been there a really long time, who's going to be better to help give this sense, this foundation of this is who we are, this is how we became who we are. It also allows the people who know what they're doing better than most other folks at the company in some specific way. Maybe they built the system, they've been there so long, or because they're a leader. Maybe they just happen to be a massive expert in that space, but it allows them to start at least identifying themselves and saying, hey, if you have a deep question about this, you can come to me. I'm going to share a little bit about this, then we'll continue the conversation. When leadership can afford the time, I know it's not easy, but again, it really does pay off. Some kind of meaningful interaction. We list lunch or coffee or some kind of gift card as an example. It can just be a conversation. It could just be an email, as long as it's personalized and you have some sense of who you're addressing as a leader. Unfortunately, if you try to do this and you're kind of haphazard about it or not really taking it too seriously, you can have the opposite effect. This executive, invited me into their office, and I've been talking to them, and they don't seem too interested, and their eyes keep on darting back to their computer because they're expecting an email, or their phone keeps blowing up. Try to make the time. It's just half an hour, and it's something that's going to mean a lot further down the line. One-on-one meetings with direct managers. Start early and do often. I know people who worked at companies where they're only meeting with their manager once every month, and even then, that doesn't always happen. I personally, from the first time I had a manager who I admired a lot, who made it a point of meeting, sometimes even twice a week, but definitely at least once a week, come, rain or snow or, sick days or what. That always made a huge difference to me. That helped boost my own profile within the company, turn them into more of an advocate for me because they got to know me better. And of course, it's another outlet for the new hire to learn to ask questions. Sorry, throat's getting a little dry here. All right. And then, of course, we've got leveraging onboarding software. Many companies don't have onboarding software, or they have something and they don't realize they have it because it's part of this huge platform that they've paid for, or they have something and they're not really using it too much because it doesn't seem, worth the squeeze. Of course, we are Welcomary, and we're here to tell you that it is absolutely worth it, not only to put it together, but to maintain it. It helps you centralize things. So that means shared accountability. If you've got one central, call it a data dictionary, that the entire company references, even if you're 500 or 1,000 people, it means that there's not going to be lost understanding. If a subject matter expert goes in there and updates it, everybody's going to have access to it. We're breaking down the walls of these silos, and there are reasons for silos, but we're breaking down these really thick walls that keep people from ever really meaningfully talking to each other. And that's really important. Allows each employee to have customized content, their onboarding plan, their connections with others, the way that they see things. If you do it effectively, it's not just for your new hires. It's for anybody in any role. You've been there 1 month or 5 years. If there are things that have been happening at the company you weren't fully aware of, how do you keep up with that? Where do you learn about the new product release, or what a feature does, or how the competitive landscape has changed if you're in a role that doesn't require you to always be up to speed about that? If you are not able to, if you can't afford the time or the people power to do this right or to do this at all, there are providers out there who are happy to help. And we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. The basis, and I really don't want to undersell this or oversimplify here, but this is all about empathy. It always has been, it always will be. Like I said at the beginning, we are all humans with our own foibles and insecurities and anxieties. And when we listen to each other and when we anticipate and when we think about how each other feels in a given situation, that is when we come up with some amazing insights. On the other hand, if you've been doing a job for 10 years and maybe you're honestly a little bit jaded by it all, you're not really going to be thinking from that perspective. You're going to be thinking, all right, here's another new person. I better give them the materials they need so that they can do their job well, so that they can take some stuff off my plate. That might be true, but that shouldn't be the only thing that drives the way you think about it. And how do you do it best? Well, again, at the risk of being overly simplistic here, we got to listen. We got to listen, and not just to, NPS surveys or, asking people over email, hey, how could you have done this better? Let's have conversations, and having conversations means making people feel enough at ease that they're willing to be honest about their experience without fear of reprisal. Because the more honest they are about their experience, the more we can improve that experience for the next person to go through it. And that comes right back to, did they have a good onboarding experience? Do they feel comfortable and confident about where they are, to the point that they're comfortable and confident sharing things that could have been done a little bit better? So sometimes even all of this is not enough to make a compelling case, because leadership, because purse strings are tight, because there are plenty of reasons to say, no, this isn't fully necessary. But the truth is, everybody benefits in one way or more from this. HR, probably the most obvious here. We get to end this cycle, or at least slow it down drastically, of recruiting, and then they're gone in a few months. Next up, the hiring manager. Who wants to spend all their time doing sourcing and recruiting with HR, because the hiring manager has to be involved, it's their team. If you can bring someone on efficiently, get them to feeling, again, I'm going to say this a million times, comfortable and confident, they're going to meet their goals much more effectively. That's pretty obvious. And they can focus on fit as much or more than expertise. So if I get someone who I think is a phenomenal puzzle piece that's going to snap right into the rest of my team, they just don't quite have that exact industry background that we were hoping for, that's maybe in that preferred qualification section of the job rec, well, that's okay. We have the tools in place to get them up to speed there, because we know we hired the right person with the right personality. From an operational perspective, we're aligning our internal processes with our goals. We're able to more effectively map, we do this and we get this outcome. And we don't have to worry about a silly little thing like culture getting in the way of our grand strategy. CFO, or anyone with the kind of bottom line or financial perspective, less budget spent on recruiting and training. It's really as simple as that. This stuff gets expensive. The average employee, it's about $2,000 a month cost-wise to continue training them after day 90 or so. And it shouldn't be necessary in most cases. Your board of directors, they're just going to see faster growth. You're going to hire people, and you're not going to lose them that quickly. And of course, the company's actual business outcomes, those are going to go up too. From a CEO's perspective, of course, you're going to meet your goals more effectively, more efficiently. Of course, your growth and profit are going to come across in a very positive way. But for that CEO, the optics are almost as important as they are for somebody who's in purely, say, a marketing role. You have net promotion. People come to you and they stay with you because they feel like they're supported, they're growing in their career, they're doing well, they are with the right team. And the last one, legal. Happy employees means fewer lawsuits. It's only one of a number of sources of lawsuits or legal headaches that legal might have to deal with at a company, but it's not nothing. All right. So, we founded Welcomary, and we did it, not surprisingly, with this focus on how do we deal with these, really major pillars of what it means to give somebody a really warm welcome, a really good initial landing. Puzzle piece moments. I think I mentioned puzzle pieces in the context of fitting with a team. Here's another context. I am a brand new employee. I am eager to go. I have studied up on this company and this industry as much as I can. My first week, I am so excited to dive in just as far as I can get. And I'm putting together this almost complete picture of what I'm seeing here at this presentation, or this email in front of me, or this other document. But there's just these little bits that I don't understand what they're saying. What does this thing mean? What does this thing stand for? That's a puzzle piece moment. You get that resolved, you snap it in, now you've got a full picture. Now there's no limit to what you can do. People, so, that org chart, that ability to, as you add employees, automatically build out what that organizational structure looks like. Like I said, understand who's making the decisions, why are things structured the way they do, what story does this tell, how can I identify this person, and then reach out to them. Who's who? Task management. So task management, we started with talking about just the forms, the standard operating procedures. That's all part of this. In fact, that's actually part of this example screenshot we have here, signing your employee handbook. But there are things that are a little bit more subjective. Many of the people related things. Take a tour of the office, grab 30 minutes or lunch with this person or that person. They were the architect of this platform. They understand it all. Make it really easy to add tasks, to be able to grab that batch of tasks for every new customer success manager and be able to assign those all to them very easily. Now you've got the common part of the onboarding figured out. Now you just have to think about, well, how do I personalize this a little bit more? And then, of course, we've got knowledge. So that knowledge base, that puzzle piece of what does this thing mean? What does it stand for? No matter what industry you're coming from, no matter how much experience you have, that is where you can add this easily, either individually or through a bulk upload of whatever information you've got. Maybe it's scattered to the winds of your company. There's a CSV here. There's an Excel file here. There's a Google Doc here. Standardizing that, loading it into one system so that, again, you've got that shared accountability. That's big too. That's our dictionary feature. And we also have the ability, not everybody has oversight to directly add something to the system, but if you've got an idea or you noticed, hey, there's this thing I've been wondering about, I can't find it in our system, like I did that second day I had at Capital One, I would have loved a way to just submit and say, OECP, I don't know what it stands for, but I keep on hearing it. Here's what I think it means. Can someone take a look at this? So we won't go too far into this, but as far as Welcomary goes, we want to support. We do not just want to throw you a piece of software and some licenses and say, go ahead and use this. Have fun. Here's a handbook on how to get it set up. That's not how it works. That's almost never successful. We want to be there as deeply and as involved as any of our clients want us to be from the very first moment that they have decided they want to use our service. That means we're going to work with you to get all of your people into the system appropriately with profiles that talk a little bit about who they are, your team structure, both your organization and maybe your horizontal teams, like a Scrum team if you're in technology, or an employee resource group, maybe people who are aligned around one particular activity. We all like riding our bikes on the weekend around here. We'll get all that loaded in, as well as the knowledge. So we have this concept called starter kit as well. For any given vertical, for most given verticals, I should say, we've got starter kits, which is, the 40 to 50 most commonly inquired about terms or acronyms, get you started. At least start with that, for something that doesn't make sense, or, hey, we don't really think of it that way. Very easy to change or remove. Unlimited seats. Most software as a service tends to price on a per seat model. We don't want to go that direction because this is the kind of tool that everybody needs. Doesn't matter how big or small you are. And we just want to reflect that in the way we have it set up. Knowledge refresh. This is the other piece where the diligence or the paying attention to your platform can unfortunately fall short pretty often. You can do the best job in the world at setting up all of your knowledge and your people. If someone spends a lot of time on, then they leave the company or they get distracted or get put on a different project, 6 months goes by, 9 months goes by, it's a museum. It becomes antiquated. And sometimes that's just annoying. Sometimes it's actively bad, because if you're relying on a definition that's no longer true, there's been some big shock to the market, or acquisitions have happened, or there are new products, or we've completely changed how we think about this or that, it's not reflected here. Well, if you have this shared knowledge repository, that's going to affect everybody negatively. So we want to be right there to help you both update things that we can help you with that are a little more general, maybe agnostic or specific to your industry. We want to help you nudge or work with your teammates who are those subject matter experts to go and take 10 seconds. Is this still accurate? You know this like the back of your hand. Help us out here. Ongoing responsive support, I think that goes without saying. So yeah, we are really, really eager to help anyone and everyone who wants to either increase the effectiveness of their onboarding program, enhance it in any way. Maybe you don't have much of an onboarding process in the first place. We want to help you put that together, whatever it takes. Welcomary as a product platform is a nice way to organize that information, make sure it is dead simple to use, no matter how techno-friendly or technophobic your new hires are. And that's why we say everyone deserves a warm welcome. And, we'll send some of this information around afterwards, but this is my contact info. I love talking about this subject matter, as you can probably tell, to say nothing of really being interested in just having a conversation about anything you might be going through. Yeah, again, we're very, very grateful that you took the time to join us today. Hopefully you got something useful, interesting out of this. And if there are any questions or other things to discuss here, would love to take them now. So thanks a lot, everyone.
Hi,
I have, oh, sorry. I was going to ask a question. Go ahead, Mina.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, and I may have missed it, with the integrations into other, what they call soup to nuts or HRIS that start with one and their ATS moving into their performance evaluation, all of that. For systems that already exist, what does integration look like?
Yeah, great question. So we are working with a platform that plugs into pretty much all the major systems out there. Everything from Workday to Paychex to Paylocity. We are still fairly young in our journey here. We have a whole lot more that we're looking forward to doing with our product. But the first place we've thought about this is really payroll specifically. And that is because as an HR person, an HR expert whose counsel I rely on very closely once told me or reminded me, nobody in an HR role or anything adjacent to that wants to spend more time maintaining multiple sources of personnel. I have this thing in my payroll system because I need to pay these people. I need to have accurate, up-to-date information for them. Well, why don't these two systems just talk to each other? Instead of having to rebuild this, even if the Welcomary team does it for me, I still want to be able to seamlessly know that if I'm updating my payroll system that day, anyone who's no longer active with the company might be archived in Welcomary. Anyone who's new might have an account automatically made for them. We have a handful of integrations right now. And I think, one of the things we'd love to prioritize based on who we work with and who our partners are is who we go after next, how we continue to build out that list. So payroll, especially as it relates to the people in your company, that is the first stage. With that, later on comes the ability to integrate some of those other things you mentioned, Annie. Maybe there are forms or workflows that are specific to this other platform I use for a lot of administrative work. Well, frame those right into Welcomary. You don't even have to leave to handle that much more of your onboarding needs or your onboarding tasks. Any other questions?
So Eric, I received a couple questions through the chat box. Question one, you mentioned your software. How easy is it to install? Do you guys do it or do I have to?
Well, the nice thing about a web-based tool is that there's really not a ton when it comes to installation. Essentially, I think it's very easy. What we would do is we would spin up a Welcomary environment for your organization. And then it really depends on how you want to go about it. Like I said, our assumption is you would like to have that extra help in loading the system. So obviously, we don't have access to your company knowledge, whatever form it's in right now, but whatever form it happens to be in, you can send it over to us. We will clean it up. We will standardize it with your blessing, of course. We will load it in. And then whether you want us to just create that first administrative user, and that person goes ahead and adds everybody else in the company, or you want us to add everybody and just give us their information so we can set up profiles for them. Either way, we're happy to do it. We want this to be as frictionless as possible. And we want this because, to more directly answer your question, by the time we're done with that process, which is really not that complicated, you can have somebody, the moment someone logs into your company's Welcomary for the first time, it's already got a lot of value. It might already be telling you the tasks you need. It's already giving you your company holidays, your, announcements for the day. It's already got a lot of useful and relevant knowledge in the system. It's already got a fully baked out both structure of your organization and kind of more of a directory view of, hey, here's everybody, here's what they do, here's how to get in touch with them. Were there any others you received offline?
Yes, here's another question. Can other departments use this, or is it strictly for HR to take on?
Oh, I would say in many ways, it's kind of designed to take some burden off of HR because, as I've kind of suggested many different ways throughout this presentation, onboarding is everybody's mission. So if you want somebody not just to learn about the high level information and needs of that company for their first week or so, you have to get involved. And so, your subject matter expert on something that's very technical, that's probably not going to be somebody who sits in HR. That's going to be somebody who's in the engineering organization. Same with, Mad Lib, mix and match any other term you want on different departments. If it's sales related, you don't want to put that burden on HR to set everything up. The main administrator of the Welcomary environment could well be somebody in a people operations or HR role, but that does not at all mean that that is the one person who's going to be having to manage it. We have roles set up so that different people can contribute in different ways to different parts of what this knowledge base is, depending on, again, how your company's structured.
Yeah, and last question, will we have access to this recording? Those statistics at the beginning of your presentation were crazy. I would like to show these to my CEO.
Yes, 100%. We are going to make this available, probably honestly, even a little bit later today. We're going to share it with everybody who was good enough to attend here today. We'll also be sharing pieces of it on our social media channels over the next couple of weeks. Different relevant pieces of all the content I went through here. So yeah, and just to expand on that a little bit more, like I said before, we know that it is not necessarily the easiest sell in the world to get leadership on board with this kind of thing, especially if they haven't come from a background where onboarding has been a big priority before. We want to help make that case more compelling because we know as well as you do just how critical it is. All right. Well, one more time, so grateful for everybody's attendance here today. We will be sharing out this information. Hopefully you found it useful, informative. If you have any other questions or want to talk about this, like I said, my email, my phone number are on here. You can always connect with us on LinkedIn or anywhere else. And yeah, it has been a pleasure. So hope you all have a great rest of your Wednesday, whether you're going through an 80-degree heat wave or a balmy 8 degrees Fahrenheit, which is what it is outside my window right now. So I'm going to do some more snow shoveling and hope you all have a great day.
Thank you.
All right.